Edition 25 of Astounding Stories 13, January 1931, by Various. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Reader's Corner, Part A. Dear Editor, just a note to tell you to keep up the good work. There was an atrocious flaw, however, in the 2 stories by Captain S. P. Meek about the Heaviside Layer. How, may I ask, do meteors penetrate through that imaginary substance which is too much for a powerful space flyer? Also, how about refraction? A substance denser than air would produce refraction that would have been noticed long ago. I don't mind minor errors, but an author has no right to ignore the facts so outrageously. Fiction goes too far when an author can invent such false conditions. In the latest issue, Stolen Brains was fine, up to the Dr. Bird standard. The Invisible Death was good enough, but too much like the general run to be noteworthy. Prisoners on the Electron couldn't stomach it. Too hackneyed. Jetta of the Lowlands by Ray Cummings. 'Nuff said. An extra man, original idea, and perfectly written. One of the reasons I hang on to science fiction. A perfect gem. Philip Waite, 3400 Wayne Avenue, New York, New York. Dear Editor, may I use enough space in your discussion columns to reply briefly to the objections raised to the science in my 2 stories, Beyond the Heaviside Layer and The Attack from Space? Understand that I am not arguing that there actually is a thick wall of semi-plastic material surrounding the earth through which a space flyer could not pass. If I did, I would automatically bar myself from writing interplanetary stories, a thing that is far from my desires. I do wish to point out, however, that such a layer might exist, so far as we at present know. The objections to which I wish to reply are 2. First, how do meteors pass through that imaginary substance which is too much for a powerful space flyer? And second, how about refraction? To reply to the first, we must consider 2 things, kinetic energy and resistance to the passage of a body. The kinetic energy of a moving body is represented by the formula 1/2 mv², where m is the mass of the body and v the velocity. The resistance of a substance to penetration of a body is expressed by the formula A(Fc), where A is the area of the body in contact with the resisting medium, and Fc is the coefficient of sliding friction between the penetrating body and the resisting medium. Consider first the space flyer. To hold personnel, the flyer must be hollow. In other words, m must be small as compared to a. A meteor, on the other hand, is solid and dense with a relatively large m and small a. Given a meteor and a space flyer of the same weight, the volume of the meteor would be much smaller, and as the area in contact with the resisting medium is a function of volume, the total resistance to be overcome by the space flyer would be much greater than that to be overcome by the meteor. Again, consider the relative velocities of a meteor and a space flyer coming from the earth toward the Heaviside Layer. The meteor from space would have an enormous velocity, so great that if it got into even very rare air, it would become incandescent. As it must go through the dense air, the space flyer could attain only a relatively low velocity before it reached the layer. Remember that the velocity is squared. A 1,000-pound meteor, flying with a velocity of 100 times that of the spaceship, would have 100 squared, or 10,000 times the kinetic energy of the spaceship, while it would also have less friction to overcome due to its smaller size. If my critic wishes to test this out for himself, I can suggest a very simple experiment. Take a plank of sound pine wood, 2 inches thick by 12 inches wide and 4 feet long. Support it on both ends, and then pile lead slabs onto it, covering the whole area of the board. If the wood be sound, the board will support 1,000 pounds readily. Now remove the lead slabs, and fire a 200-grain lead bullet at the board with a muzzle or initial velocity of 1,600 feet per second. The bullet will penetrate the board very readily. Consider the Heaviside Layer as the board, the spaceship as the lead slabs, and the bullet as the meteor, and you have the answer. Consider one more thing. According to the stories, the layer grew thicker and harder to penetrate as the flyer reached the outer surface. The meteor would strike the most viscous part of the layer with its maximum energy. As its velocity dropped and its kinetic energy grew less, it would meet material easier to penetrate. On the other hand, the flyer, coming from the earth, would meet material easy to penetrate and gradually lose its velocity and consequently its kinetic energy. When it reached the very viscous portion of the layer, it would have almost no energy left with which to force its way through. Remember, the Mercurians made no attempt to penetrate the layer until a portion of it had been destroyed by Carpenter's genius. As for the matter of refraction, if you will place a glass cube or other form in the air, you will have no difficulty in measuring the refraction of the light passing through it. If, however, the observer would place himself inside a hollow sphere of glass so perfectly transparent as to be invisible, would not the refraction he would observe be taken by him to be the refraction of air, when in reality it would be the combined refraction of the glass sphere and the air around him? I have taken glass as the medium to illustrate this, because my critic made the statement that a substance denser than air would produce refraction that would have been noticed long ago. However, nowhere in either story is the statement made that the material of the heaviside layer was denser than air. The statement was that it was more viscous. Viscosity is not necessarily a function of density. A heavy oil, such as you will use in winter to lubricate your automobile, has a much higher viscosity than water, yet it will float on water. In other words, it is less dense. There is nothing in the story that would prevent the heaviside layer from having a coefficient of refraction identical with that of air. To close, let me repeat that I am not arguing that such a layer exists. I do not believe that it does, and I do believe that my generation will probably see the first interplanetary expedition start and possibly see the first interplanetary trip succeed. I do, however, contend that the science in my stories is accurate until it transcends the boundaries of present-day knowledge and ceases to be science and becomes super-science, and that my super-science is developed in a logical manner from science, and that nothing in present knowledge makes the existence of such a layer impossible. S. P. Meek, Captain, Ordnance Department, USA. Likes long novelettes. Dear Editor, I have just finished reading the August issue of your magazine. I am going to rate the different stories in percents. 100% means excellent, 75% fairly good, 50% passable, 25% just an ordinary story. I give Marooned Under the Sea by Paul Ernst 100%, 75% for The Attack from Space by Captain S. P. Meek, The Problem in Communication by Miles J. Brewer, M.D., and Jetta of the Lowlands by Ray Cummings. 50% for The Murder Machine by Hugh B. Cave, and Earth the Marauder by Arthur J. Burks. 25% for The Terrible Tentacles of L-472 by Sewell Peaslee Wright. I am happy to say that since I have been reading your magazine, I have induced at least 10 of my friends to be constant readers of this magazine. I like the long novelettes much better than continued novels, and hope that in the future we will get bigger and better novelettes. Leonard Estrin, 1145 Morrison Avenue, Bronx, New York. Hasn't decided. Dear Editor, move over, you old-timers, and let a newcomer say something. A few months ago I didn't read any science fiction. Now I read it all. I haven't decided yet which magazine I like best. I was a little disappointed when you didn't have another story in the September copy by R. P. Starzl, who wrote Planet of Dread. I thought you would hold on to a good author when you find one. I would also like another story by the fellow who wrote the serial Murder Madness. I like short stories best. That idea of a mechanical nirvana in Miles J. Brewer's story was good. Jetta of the Lowlands, opinion reserved. I like the action of the story, but I hate a hero who is always bragging about himself. Don't think I'm complaining, but nothing is perfect. Why not try to get a story of A. Merritt's or Ralph Milne Farley's? A. Dougherty, 327 North Prairie Avenue, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Announcement. Dear Editor, May I enter the Reader's Corner to announce that a branch of the Scienceers has recently been formed in Clearwater, Florida, by a group of science fiction enthusiasts? We have a library of 175 science fiction magazines, including a complete file of Astounding Stories to date. We hold weekly meetings at which scientific topics are discussed and current science fiction stories commented upon. As the first branch of the Scienceers, we are striving to achieve a success that will be a mark for other branches to aim at. Carlton Abernathy, P.O. Box 584, Clearwater, Florida. From Mary England. Dear Editor, I came across your May publication of Astounding Stories the other day, and I cannot resist writing to you to congratulate you on the most interesting magazine I have ever read. I am now determined to take it every month. Read The Atom Smasher. It is A1. I have read several interplanetary stories over here, but none to touch those of your magazine. Best wishes for the success of your book and its authors. J.C. Atkinson, 17 Balaclava Road, Sheffield, England. Starting Young. Dear Editor, you'll excuse my writing, for it is the end of vacation. I like your book very much, which many other readers approve of. Some dislikes, of course, everyone has, and I have 3 which many readers have, too. First, I wish the magazine were bigger, and the paper better. Second, have more stories and raise the price to 25 cents. Third, have stories of the future, such as Earth the Marauder, and stories of lost Atlantis, the Fourth Dimension, other planets, atoms, and electrons. Jack Farber, Payette, Idaho. P.S. I'm 11 years old and interested in science. Doesn't like cereals. Dear Editor, I am a recent reader of the Astounding Stories magazine. I am going to keep getting the magazine, as I like it very much. I did not like Murder Madness, or Burke's Earth, the Marauder, very much. I do not think Murder Madness is the type of story that belongs in this magazine. I do not like continued stories very much, as I hate to break off at an interesting point, and wait a whole month before I can read the next installment or conclusion of the story. The front piece of the magazine is very good, and except for the criticisms mentioned above, the magazine is excellent. Kempt Mitchell. A Staunch Defender. Dear Editor, at one time a friend introduced your excellent little publication to me. I read it and enjoyed every paragraph of it. This issue starred The Monsters of Moyen, which I consider a real super-science story. I have followed the Reader's Corner quite a time. In the September issue I saw where someone made a commentary on the magazine. One of the things they said was that the paper should be of a better grade. It is true that this would help, but our magazine is not half full of advertisements to pay for this expense. Dear friends, this is no Saturday Evening Post. Don't ask too much. Then you may take in consideration that other magazines of science fiction have no better grade of paper than this, for I have purchased several. I have but one thing to say as an improvement for it. That is, why shouldn't there be a quarterly? Other science fiction magazines have them. They have complete stories and are double in size and price. Dear Editor, please, for the public's sake, put out a quarterly. I'm sure others would like one. H. C. Kaufman, Jr., 1730 North Monroe Street, Baltimore, Maryland. End of Part A.